Hello everyone, this is Rick and welcome to Astral Club. This is the Loosh Collectors, the Gardeners. I will have links to the previous episodes on the Loosh Collectors. I'll have links in a pinned comment in the description. So in case you missed any of the previous episodes, you can review those. Let me talk about Patreon. We have new patrons, Tom, Jadzia, Nephi Takpi, they're all Astral Scouts, and Jennifer Davies, who is an Astral Master. Ordinarily, I'd be releasing these advanced videos to patrons on early Sunday morning. However, I'm going to do so 24 hours early, almost immediately after making these episodes, just to be on the safe side. As you know, I have been threatened in the past, and not unrealistically. They've set me into two very unpleasant places in some sort of dimension or future. And I was threatened that if I shared this information, that would happen again. So far, though, I have escaped notice. But to be on the safe side, I'm going to send this out to my patrons early so that if anything happens, it'll be their responsibility to make sure this information is more widely distributed to Astral Club and any other community they think is worthwhile. Towards that end, Patreon, if you'd like to join, there'll be a link in the description. You get downloaded episodes that you could put on your podcast app. There's no commercials, emails where we can talk back and forth, and you get your advanced videos on Sunday. There's also private astral projections lessons. If that's something that you're interested in, be more than glad to work with you. And there will be an email in the description where you can request further information. Real briefly, I was pulled into a light egg ship occupied by these plasma beings that were collecting a wide variety of loosh, which is emotional and other types of energy coming from Earth. They were collecting it and taking it elsewhere. Monroe was the one who first described loosh. He used the term, so I might as well use it as well. It was just his term for this energy that was emitted by living beings. When the ship retreated, I was pulled in with it into a wormhole where I was transported into a plasma type dimension where billions of these plasma beings were swimming about, devouring this loosh. In the prior episode, I had fended off the hungry beings that had been swarming around me by immersing myself in the primitive animal intelligence that I had experienced when I went back 75 million years into the past, into the body of what I called a dino crocodile, which was a dinosaur lived 75 million years ago that pretty much ate dinosaurs. And it was that animal intelligence, that animal vibration that pretty much put those other plasma beings off their lunch and they left me alone. But I wanted to have some sort of communication, if I could, without attracting unwanted attention naturally. So I scanned through this plasma, and it wasn't easy because I had to get through this massive energy that was flowing everywhere. So I scanned until I found a being that seemed larger than the others. And I didn't sense the hunger that I sensed in the other beings or the existential dread of my imminent demise, which I had sensed before. Instead, I sensed a being that was of higher intelligence, so I beamed an invitation to have a discussion with this larger being. It stopped in its tracks, and then it moved towards me. It stopped at a comfortable distance, and the first thing it communicated somewhat hesitantly was, "You do not belong here." I apologized and said that I was drugged into this dimension by one of their egg ships by mistake. And so since I was here, I wanted to ask a few questions and perhaps learn a little about their civilization. It thought for a while, and then I could tell that it cautiously agreed, but I still had this feeling that it was humoring me, much like a parent might humor a 4-year-old who is asking questions that are slightly annoying. But heck, I was in communication with these beings for the first time, really. So, I wasn't going to be picky about being treated properly. So, obviously, my first question was, what do you do with the loosh you collect? It thought about this. I don't know if it was trying to understand the concepts or if it was framing its speech so that I could understand it. Something was going on. But anyway, the answer I got was we use it to advance our species. Now, this is another one of those things where I know there was a lot more to it. There was an infinite amount of information buried behind that sentence. But I imagine it may have been trying to convey that to me, but it wasn't. That's what I got out of it. That was the best I could get out of it. And I guess, hey, I mean, I shouldn't beat myself up. After all, these are highly alien beings. The fact that I was having any kind of communication, it's probably pretty amazing. And once again, it was communicating and not trying to serve me up as an entree. The next question was, do you just collect from Earth? It responded, no. We have many other worlds in many other dimensions. I think that's what it said, dimension. I'm pretty sure that's what it was. There was a concept, and I think dimensions might be the best English word. At any rate, it says, no, we have many other worlds in dimensions that we collect from of varying, then it hesitated, quality. So evidently they are loosh connoisseurs, much like millennials. I hate to pick on you guys, but heck, you pick on baby boomers, so I'll pick on millennials a little bit too. Much like you guys seem to be connoisseurs of craft beers. So there you go. My next question was, is Earth high quality loosh? The answer was a little bit longer than the last answer. So I think it was last answers. So perhaps it was getting a better read on how to communicate with me, or maybe I was getting a little bit better at understanding. I'm not sure. Anyway, it said the quality is superior now. In the past, the loosh was abundant, but of low quality. It hesitated, gardeners diverted a celestial object into Earth's path to make way for life forms that produced higher quality loosh. It was a long-term plan, but you, mammalian animals, produced superior loosh than the previous life forms. I asked the next question that was very much burning in my mind, and I know many of you would probably have asked the same question. I asked, do you think it's right to harvest loosh from Earth without human consent? This definitely caused it to pause, and I sensed it was having a harder time understanding my question. Eventually it answered, and it said, we are the gardeners. It is our right to harvest our crop? And that was a very simple and direct answer. I almost wish it hadn't been so simple or direct, because there didn't seem to be any ambiguity in that response. It seemed to be very straightforward. And perhaps the reason it took so long to answer my inquiry is that it didn't understand the question, or at least the question didn't make sense at first. Well, I came back feeling a little bit aggrieved on behalf of my species. I said, is it right even though it's against human will or human free will? The answer, once again, was quite simple, devastatingly simple. It said, we don't observe any difference between human animals and the other life forms on your world. You all produce loosh of varying qualities. Well, of course, I came right back at it with, but humans are sentient. We are unlike the other inhabitants of Earth. Surely that gives us some added rights, or at least, the right to be asked for our consent before something like this, some sort of life energy, is taken from us. Because we're sentient. We're different from the other life forms. Now it hesitated and was thoughtful, is how I interpreted it. Once again, it's tough, especially when you're dealing with beings that are so alien. Anthropomorphizing is pretty much a hazard in any kind of an instance. When you're dealing with alien beings, you're trying to communicate with them, and you're trying to interpret what they say in terms that you as a human can understand to some degree. And of course, I guess from their standpoint, they face a similar problem. But after it hesitated, it replied once again in a devastating way. It said, humans are primitive, violent animals. True, your tool use is superior to other animals, but that is a minor point. Your spiritual energy development is still very low. I came back at it again, feeling a little bit more aggrieved than even before. But once again, still trying to maintain a certain level of diplomacy, because, once again, I'm not looking to make enemies that don't already exist. But I said, there are humans who are angry that you harvest our loose energy without our consent. The being hesitated less this time and responded, you eat the flesh of lower animals. You also prey upon your fellow human creatures. If your race harvests your own kind, how is that different from what we do? Now that point knocked me off my center. It's irritating to try to maintain the moral high ground as a species when you have the bloody history of mankind as your only supporting evidence. In the 20th century alone, over 100 million humans died directly or indirectly due to human aggression, wars, man-made starvation, just disaster after disaster that we caused to our fellow beings. So my stand on principle was really nothing but a very slippery slope. I mean, he was right. I'm going to call him a he because I don't know what else to call him. Once again, it was just impossible to hold the high ground to almost any species when you've got our history. And you know, when you're called out, you're called out. What do you say to that? How do you say, oh, you're wrong for doing this to us when we do it to each other? You know, at least when they collect the Loosh energy, it doesn't cause the termination of the life of the biological unit that it's taking the energy from. Whereas when we wage our wars, that's exactly what we do. And at least they do it for a reason. What do we do it for? I mean, it's just an impossible position to be in. I hate doing that as a diplomat, because as a diplomat, I'm constantly forced to be humble, especially when this subject comes up. In fact, and perhaps he did this as a way to put a cherry on top of this crap sundae. He said, in fact, there has been discussion among us whether to mass harvest Earth Loosh or stay the slow course. That caused me to pause, definitely, to try to digest that. What this being was talking about was causing an extinction event on Earth. It had mentioned earlier that it steered that rock that hit Earth 66 million years ago that wiped the dinosaurs, or the non-avian dinosaurs, off the face of the Earth, making way for the mammalian species to take over and therefore enrich the Loosh quality on Earth, or to continue along in the current harvesting process. It just was very humbling to be thought of as a crop, and to know that these beings were making this decision whether to exterminate my species or to allow us to continue along the current course in hopes that we will continue to produce high quality Loosh and perhaps not wipe ourselves out unexpectedly and ruin their whole garden, like with nuclear radiation, for instance. My best response when hit with this was that on behalf of Earth, I request that you allow us to progress along this course. I have faith that humans will continue to improve, that we'll overcome our difficulties, and you'll continue to get the high quality Loosh that you need to advance your race. It thought about this and it considered it and didn't answer me, but I didn't get a no either. So if you don't get a no, it might mean a yes. At that point, though, it summoned an egg ship and instructed the egg ship to take me back to my home dimension and then drop me off near Earth. I was given a warning, and I was told that I was not to discuss anything that I had seen here in this dimension, or I would be disciplined, which is, of course, why I ended up waiting 28 years to really get into this. I shared with you my 2 prior experiences where I was disciplined, and you can certainly hear more about that in the first episode of this series, or in a prior episode if you have, pretty much listened to all my videos up to now. However, I have decided to proceed cautiously, and I want to release this information before I pass on from this physical life. As I said, I'm going to release this right away. And should anything happen, I will leave it up to my patrons to make sure this information is released to the best of their ability. And I thank you if that happens, although I have faith that I will avoid any further punishment. Let's keep our fingers crossed. If you liked this episode and this series, please hit the like button, share it with those of like minds, subscribe if you haven't already, make sure that bell is solid so you're notified on Wednesday and Saturday when there's new episodes. And please, questions, comments, I know you've got them, make sure you put them down. I love reading and responding to that stuff. And as always, this is Rick. And I hope to see you on the astral plane.